Good morning, and Bernard needs no introduction, and I'm not going to give him one. I'm going to let him do that himself. But we're really honored to have Bernard here, really for two reasons. One, this is a medtech ecosystem meeting. I think Edwards is one of the most prolific disruptors and innovators in our space, and we need to hear about how that's going. A little bit about, I'll say, the secret sauce of Edwards' innovation recipe. And then I want to give this minute to really introduce Bernard to the industry. Bernard is now the CEO of Edwards. I think everyone's aware, Edwards has been a leading company for a couple of decades and was led by Mike Musalem. Mike is still chairman of the board, but this is a succession challenge, unlike really any other. First time that there's a new CEO at Edwards in its history. And I think it's just a fantastic opportunity to get to know Bernard and his vision for the company. So Bernard, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Paul.
And what I'd love to do on that concept of introducing you to the team here is to give you a sense or an opportunity to talk about how you developed as an executive pre-Edwards. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of your stops along the way and some of the most impactful events for you, and maybe some of your biggest successes, and if there is one, maybe a failure or two that I think folks really love to hear how leaders were changed based on the highs and lows of their early stage career development.
Absolutely. Paul, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Good morning, everyone. If you notice an accent, it is not from New York. You know, the sound system is working well, so don't complain about it. So I have been with the medtech industry for about 30 years. And I have been very fortunate to have been with two world-class companies, J&J for 20 years and Edwards for about 10 years. What I was reflecting a lot about these two companies. So what I learned from J&J first was I learned about the life science industry. How important all what we do for patients is meaningful. I learned about processes. I learned about how to bring to market technologies. Also, it is one of these giant. In my mind, they are one of the best at talent management. Being able to identify talent early on in their career, being able to move them, challenge them, stretch them. And I am the perfect example. I started in the south of France, and they moved me 9 times in 20 years. Different functions, different locations. So you learn a lot, and you are developing as a leader. When I joined Edwards, it was kind of a revelation for me. Yeah, I suddenly realized that there is this company, Edwards Lifesciences, which is an amazing company, built by a legend in the industry, Mike Musalem, who took care about the entire ecosystem, the people, the culture, the innovation, the risk-taking, the long-term commitment, all together. So from the day I joined the company about 10 years ago to today, I'm still amazed by the 20,000 employees that we have at Edwards and how do we do things. So back to your question, Paul, about a few things that I want to share with you in terms of what did I learn, the successes and also failure. I want to say that I want to use 2 examples at Edwards. The first one is I was so lucky to start by leading the surgical business unit. It is the historical business unit. We have been a pioneer for 65 years. And did we become complacent? Absolutely not. We are still committed to expand, to innovate, to partner with physicians, to impact more patients. So this, gave me truly the DNA of a company. And then about 6-7 years ago, Mike came to me and said, look, what we want to do now, building on the TAVR success. And again, I'm sure you all know TAVR. TAVR is probably the number one success in the medtech industry today. We want to do the same for mitral patients and tricuspid patients. These patients have no options. And we are going to do it in a way that we are going to be proud of when we look back, by bringing the best technology, by bringing the best evidence, understanding the disease, understanding the patients, partnering with physicians. And today, these patients have no options. Maybe 10 years later, they will have options. And we will be this company. So I took on this challenge 6-7 years ago. And today, this division, this business unit, reached an inflection point. We are the only approved portfolio of technologies to treat these patients in the US, in Europe, and in Japan. And we are expanding. So for sure, this was an amazing learning. The learning, if you think about it, committing upfront that to be the leader years later, the willingness to take the risk. Many of the things we tried failed, many of them. We applied the learning. We made decisions to make things better, to improve the portfolio. The willingness to invest at risk. Very often, most of the large medtech companies, what are they doing? I know it is not what you are doing, in the startup world, but in the large medtech industry, what they are doing, they wait for revenue. They fund one project, and then they wait for the second one. Here we started with 10, investing billions upfront before any revenue. So for sure, a big learning. Now, failure. I had so many here in the last 6 years with TMTT.
Limited to 5 or 6. No.
Yeah, it is like you believe in a project, you believe in a technology. 2 years later, you realize it was a bad idea, and having the ability to stop it. One of the greatest success today of TMTT is a project when the team came to me and said, we believe it is a good project. I said, I don't think so. I don't believe in it. Let's kill it. They didn't listen to me. They did it anyway. Because also, they felt that they could do that. They felt that, failing, even if I said no up front, was going to be okay. So they felt, empowered to do their job.
That is amazing, and that speaks to risk tolerance as part of the culture. And you have to have that in innovation, right? Even as investors, we understand when we make an investment, we believe everyone will work, but we also underwrite overall to a presumed failure rate. So we don't think the one we're investing in is going to be the failure rate, but we know they're going to be there, and the art is in selecting them. Maybe spend a few minutes, Bernard, talking about the overarching culture of innovation at Edwards. And when you think about a number, what's most impressive to me is 17% of sales investment in R&D, which has to be the highest among the major companies, and speaks to your conviction to be thinking about leadership and driving next generation technology. So how are you leading that culture and investment at the highest level really in the industry?
No, thanks. Yeah, that's a very good one. It is an important one. And I am always thinking about how to make it even better. It is not just about financials. So yes, we invest a lot, 17 to 18% of revenue in R&D, about $1 billion a year. It is also about the people. We have 2,000 engineers solely dedicated to bringing breakthrough technologies. But it is also about the objective. We are focusing on large unmet patient needs. We want to be first. First is important to us because this gives us the opportunity to create a market. And you have options as a company. You can go for share, or you can go for let's create a market. Share is easier. The market exists already. We don't believe it is the go-to strategy for us. What we like to do is take risk, go first, create markets. Because what you do is you connect all of the ecosystem, inventors, payers, providers, physicians, with engineers. And you create something which is sustainable. So yes, the road is long. Yes, the road is complex. But this is the way we are thinking about it. So usually when decisions are easy for me to stop a project, it is when we look at the project and we say, we are going to be number 3. If it is about us being number 2, we look at it. What we really like is us being number 1, creating the market, being the leader, remaining the leader. And that's truly the mantra for everybody at Edwards, and specifically the 2,000 engineers and all of the leaders.
One of the things I want to hear about is what is, I think, unique to Edwards as a leader. There are a lot of small, medium-sized companies in our world that do one thing or have a singular focus, singular direction. Edwards has moved into the upper level, the upper echelon of medtech leadership in scale and in all financial metrics, and yet is not really a diversified medtech player. It is a concentrated, focused medtech player, really focused on structural heart disease. And that is a regimentation and a rigorous direction that most companies lack. Maybe you could describe a little bit about why that is so viable for Edwards.
Yes. Obviously, becoming the CEO about a year ago, I took the time to think about how to bring this special company to the next level. And I studied a lot what companies are doing. And that, most of the companies, what are they doing? An extreme diversification. So they are in one segment or 2 segments, and what are they saying? Let's go to this 3rd and 4th and 5th segments. Let's buy companies. And every year, they grow in a very successful manner. We all have names that we say, look at these companies. They do amazing. They grow. They are very successful. They impact patient care. They are very distinguished. And the question for me was, is it what I want to do? Are we this kind of company? And clearly the answer was no. No for many reasons. The first one, I do believe that structural heart disease is so big, so broad, there are so many patients in needs, that we have an interesting strategy to further expand within structural heart disease. We are present in some sub-segments, but not all of them. So by us expanding within a space that we know well, within a space that basically we have no competitions. We have a capability. We know how to take the risk. We have the domain knowledge. Will position us for a great differentiation. So I'm looking at this one as saying we can expand, we can diversify, but within one space, a space that we know well, a space that we are committed to. So that's basically our vision and strategy has. And an implication of that decision was one of our business, critical care, I'm sure you saw the news, was not necessarily fitting that core vision. So we said, let's manage the portfolio. And all good companies are doing that. Correct? You have a clear direction, a clear vision, a clear strategy. You know your space, and you have one business, not exactly in its core. So we made the decision to spin off critical care.
And that's enabled in part by the richness, right, of what structural heart offers. I want to reflect specifically on TAVR.
Yes.
And obviously TAVR is today the cornerstone of structural heart. But for those of us who are older, we remember a world before TAVR existed. And I reflect back on the days when interventional cardiology didn't exist, right? We had angiography, there was no such thing as interventional cardiology. 35 years later, it's extraordinarily common. You go back 20 years, there was no such thing as interventional structural heart. There was surgery, or there was nothing else. And so today, TAVR, multi-billion, Edwards leads in market development, technology development, clinical evidence. Tell us a little bit about the secret sauce of TAVR leadership, because that is so, I think, foretelling of what will follow with TMTT and other businesses in structural.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And I spend a lot of time understanding how did we become so successful in TAVR. So 20 years ago, everything started with a vision. Mike Mesalem, CEO at the time, said, you know what, we are going to transform care for this patient. And he showed me, because he kept many of the communication he got at the time from many people saying, you are crazy. It will never happen.
It'll never work.
Never. If you think about today, 1 million patients have been treated with TAVR today. It is the new standard of care. So for me, it is also thinking about, you need to have a vision. You need to believe in it. It was not an easy ride. The first 3-4 years were tough years. I am sure if Mike was here many times, he was probably thinking, shall I kill this project? Because it is never going to be successful. So it is about, again, the risk-taking, the vision, the investment behind it, but also the technology advancement. If you look at today, a TAVR procedure, I don't know how many of you have seen one, it is so easy. Half an hour. Barely no complication for patients. The patient gets in the night before, next day they are leaving the hospital. They have a new life. So all of that together is what? It is like technology, evidence, physician training. Our team support every case, to make sure patient outcome is achieved for every patient. So that's truly the magic here. Now the question is, so where is it going? Some people, last year, some people at Wall Street, were saying, it is the end of TAVR growth, all of that. And I was telling them, and I think, they start to believe in me now, saying, no, it is just the beginning of TAVR. It is still, underpenetrated in the US. So imagine in Europe, imagine in emerging countries, barely penetrated. So we have a ton of patients to treat with TAVR. TAVR is only approved for severe symptomatic patients, which is a very narrow patient population. And as a typical Edwards way, we are bringing evidence to expand indication to asymptomatic patients, to moderate risk patients. So in the years to come, what we see is plenty of opportunity for TAVR. So more patients, more indications, new technologies, more evidence. So we still even though TAVR today is an amazing success story, I see a great success story in the next 10 years for TAVR.
You just said in a typical Edwards way, but really it wasn't there. There was no typical Edwards way 10, 15 years ago. TAVR didn't exist. You had a legacy surgical franchise and a critical care franchise. and really created this blueprint with TAVR that now I think is a model for market creation. And I do want to remind folks of an anecdote. J&J, Boston Scientific, and Medtronic were all investors in the first TAVR asset, PVT. And all three passed on the deal. All three said, and I was there, I was on the board of PVT at the time, all three said, we're not so sure about this thing. It was by no means obvious that the market would be large, that 1 million patients could be treated, that the category could expand. And it was passed by then, the 3 largest interventional cardiovascular franchises in the world. And in today's economics, I think the final purchase price was $135 million with an earnout, a small one. Today, that would be a drop in the bucket, right, for typical M&A. So who wouldn't today look back and say, would you spend a couple $100 million to buy a leadership ticket into a market that could be a $5 to $10 billion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Everybody would do it, but everyone passed except for Edwards. And I think that there's a message in there about the long-term vision. So let's flip the card now onto the next phase, right, which is TMTT. You can do repair, you can do replacement, you can do mitral, you can do tricuspid. There's a larger patient population by far in aggregate in comparison to aortic stenosis. So you're then charged with creating the vision for TMTT. You basically have a white board and nothing on it. Tell us how you got to where we are today.
So one is we look at the TAVR story, and you told the story very well, the PVT story, but the success in my mind became after. The engineers developing the technology, the generation of evidence, having the right people training physicians. To do that, you need to commit long term. If you care about your next quarter of earnings or the next year growth, you don't do this kind of things. It is impossible. You need to be a long-term player to be able to invest in a company, buy technologies, and spend 5, 6, 10 years to make it a huge success, to create a market. It is a different kind of playbook. So in TMTT, it was the same. So we look at this one, and then we said, so what's different? The patient was very different. The patients are very different. They are very diverse. The anatomy, comorbidities, the complexity of these patients. So from the beginning, we realized that one technology, one modality will not be sufficient. And then, we love this one. You know why? Because we said nobody is going to do it. None of the strategic are going to take the risk to invest in a portfolio of technologies, investing billions upfront for a long-term vision. But we put together this portfolio, this vision. Initially, we had probably 10 bets. We are down to 4-ish. And we have 2 being approved, so a repair technology for mitral and tricuspid, and a replacement technology for tricuspid. There is a mitral technology coming soon, and 1 or 2 maybe in the pipeline. But we were able to start wide and broad, rationalized, and invest more into the likely scenario of success. But it took us, 7 years. 7 years of putting a plan together, changing the plan. Guess how many times we changed the plan in any given year in the last 7 years? About 10 times. We started the year saying, no, we believe that. We are sure. And in March, we said, you know what? Not sure about this one. Let's change the plan, or let's change the study, or let's change the design of a study, or let's work on Gen 2 of this technology. Or, no, it is not a good one. Let's blend these 2 technologies. Let's blend these 2 teams together.
It's amazing. And what has come out of it most recently is a product called Evoke, which some of you may have heard about. PMA approval, no panel, entirely new category with an active cardiac implant treating a patient population that basically didn't have alternatives. Tell us how that came about, because that to me is the single best individual example that looks like a following example to the SAPIEN franchise in TAVR.
Yeah. So obviously, this one is, again, the beginning was not easy. So we started a mitral replacement program 15 years ago. Complete failure. So we went to Gen 2, didn't make it happen. So we said, we saw a technology out there and we said, it looks a great technology, let's buy the company. We bought the company. Didn't make it. We took what we bought, asked our engineer to improve it. Not a success. The team said, you know what? With what we learned in surgical, with what we learned 15 years ago, and with that technology, we could develop it for the right side of the heart. And Evoque was born at that time, about 6 years ago. We did first in men's, very successful. We did an EFS, the fastest enrolling EFS. Then we talked to FDA about the result. We put together a pivotal study, randomized study, fastest enrollment ever in a clinical study, and an approval, without panel, given the great clinical outcome. So, but if you think about it, it depends, when do you look at this story, correct? If you look at the story of the last 2 years, you say you are amazing.
That's great.
Amazing. If you look at the story of the last 15 years, you say innovation is complex.
I think that innovation is complex message is perfect for the next story, because now you take your successes in TAVR, the franchise foundation that you built for TMTT, and to the credit of the management team, say, what's next after that? And you've identified, call it a new leg to the stool, a new interventional space that is derived from structural heart disease, but maybe not valvular disease. So Tell us a little bit about what your vision is for the next franchise beyond TMTT and TAVR.
So this one is coming from for 2 reasons. The first one is about, obviously, we are getting a big company, $6 billion in revenue, growing fast. Do I want to sustain that? Absolutely. So when you have this kind of size and scale to grow at that pace, you need to have innovation coming. And I talk also a lot about hey, we don't want this extreme diversification. We want to stay in a space, in a large one and growing one, structural heart disease. But also it is coming from the fact that innovation takes time. TAVR took more than 10 years to be a large business. Think about TMTT, 7 years, and it is today a 200 million business, growing 50, 60, 70% every quarter, but not yet a big business if you think about it. So from first in man to being a large business, you need 10 years, plus or minus. So I'm already thinking about the next 10 years. So I do believe that TAVR has so many catalysts. TMTT is just at the beginning, but we need to think about the year 10, year 11, and heart failure within structural heart disease is a very large space where there are so many patients in need. They have barely no options. Their life is miserable. They go in a hospital twice, 3, 4 times a year. They take drugs. They can't have a normal life. So do I believe Edwards can come in with technologies and change the care of his patient? Absolutely. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. It is going to take us time. We will have to have multiple bets, and we are very committed to do that. Again, we are not going to see revenue next year, but we are going to be there.
Maybe overarching all of this at a high level for innovation, you have a lot of R&D investment, as we've talked about, engineers, millions and millions of dollars, organic investment. Then you have mentioned buying companies, bought this one, didn't work for mitral, might be repurposed for tricuspid. Tell us about your thoughts on organic investment, inorganic investment, and let's say balance sheet work, and how you think about taking advantage of the entire ecosystem for innovation, whether it's inside Edwards or from outside.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I like very much, if you think about who we are and the success we had, our people could be proud, but also resistant to looking outside. And they are not, and we are not. We know that there are so many amazing technologies out there, so many great people in startups that we want to be connected. We are so very open to, obviously, organic innovation. We spend a lot, but also very open and very active in making acquisitions, technology acquisitions. What we like the most when we think about acquisition is pre-revenue acquisitions. Because we believe that our capability is truly about innovating fast, making the technology better, bringing the right evidence, training physicians. So if you make an acquisition of a post-revenue companies, they are already in market. And usually, it is not the way we want the market to be. We care about the patient, we care about the payers, we care about reimbursement, we care about all of this. And so our experience is the sooner we get in, the better it is. So we can create the market the way we want.
We're out of time. Maybe, do you have any final comment for the innovators in the room? This is a difficult environment. It's a difficult financing environment. It's hard to raise capital. M&A has been slow. There's been no IPO. And yet you sit here with a 10-year vision and a passion for leading and creating new markets. What's your message to the innovators in the medtech space?
I believe we have the same job. And so for me, it is all about believing. You need to believe. You need to have a plan and change your plan. So many times, I see people telling me, no, I like my plan. I look at them and I say, change your plan. You will like the new one. Your plan, our plan, has to be changed on a regular basis, not the vision.
Well, Bernard, thank you. It's a great message. Edwards is a great company. This has been a wonderful introduction to a great leader. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.